Hello, welcome in everyone who's coming in. Just give a moment for folks to come on in and we will get started. So hello everyone, welcome to Dykes Camera Action, a film by Caroline Berler, hosted by the GLBT Historical Society. My name is Lee Pfeffer. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm the museum operations manager here at the Society, and I'm here to introduce tonight's event. But first, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that the GLBT Historical Society is based on Ohlone tribal land, and I invite any Indigenous folks with us today to make themselves visible in the chat and be recognized as we honor the contemporary and ancestral lives of America's Indigenous people. Today's event will be recorded and we'll be posting an edited version on our YouTube channel after the event, but due to the nature of this being a film screening, it will not be recorded and live streamed on Facebook. We welcome all of you who are in attendance to please add to the chat and engage. We want to have a wonderful conversation while the film is going on. Please just make sure that you put in all panelists and attendees when you try to write a comment in the chat, otherwise only I will see it. And just a little bit of information about the Historical Society. Founded in 1985, the GLBT Historical Society is recognized internationally as a leader in the field of LGBTQ public history. Our mission is to collect, preserve, exhibit, and make accessible to the public materials and knowledge to support and promote understanding of LGBTQ history, culture, and arts in all their diversity. Our operations are centered around two sites: the GLBT Historical Society Museum, located since 2011 in the heart of San Francisco's Castro neighborhood, and the Dr. John P. DeCecco Archives and Research Center in the Mid-Market District. And although our physical locations are currently closed due to the pandemic, we have a growing array of exhibitions, events, and archival resources on our website at glbthistory.org. And finally, I would like to thank all of our members and donors who make our work possible. If you're not already a card-carrying member of the GLBT Historical Society, please consider joining today. Members get a variety of perks, including a 20% discount on purchases of cool swag at our online store. So for tonight's event, I'm going to pass it off to a pre-recorded conversation that I had with our wonderful director, Caroline Berler, and then we will launch into the film, and we will have a wonderful pre-recorded panel moderated by Jenni Olsen and many of the film's participants. I hope that you enjoy. Welcome to Caroline Berler, who is the director of Dykes Camera Action. I just wanted to get you on here. I know this is, pre-recorded, so folks can't say hi and thank you and welcome, but I wanted to give just a few minutes for you to chat a little bit about why you wanted to make this film and introduce it to folks who have never seen it before, and then we'll launch into watching it all together.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for screening the film. This film is my first feature-length film, and it was such a passion project. It started as my thesis at the School of Visual Arts, and I met Rose Troche that semester very serendipitously, and meeting her was very inspiring. And I was also, searching for the perfect film to make while I was earning my MFA. And I just looked back at my life and thought about what had affected me the most. And I just remember, growing up in Texas and not really having any gay role models around, that these films that I would see were so important to me. And getting to meet Rose and learn about her place in this history was really incredible. And she's just such a wise, funny person that just lights up the screen. And so I contacted her for, to do an interview just to see if this could work. And it was so great. She was so amazing. that I knew that there was something here and I wanted to keep going with it. And she's like, you should talk to Barbara Hammer. So the next one I did was Barbara Hammer, and it just grew and grew. And it really started out as my love for the films of the 90s, which was such a important time, I felt, or at least for me, because that was sort of when I was coming up, and those were the films that I discovered. And it just grew and grew to become a more holistic look at the whole history. There's a pre-Stonewall mention, and then we really start in the 70s with Barbara Hammer and go forward. And it was just such a pleasure and an honor to talk to all these women and learn more about the stories behind these films that meant so much to me.
That's wonderful. Without giving any sort of spoilers for folks who haven't seen it, is there like a favorite moment or a favorite person that you got to talk to?
They were all awesome.
I put you on the spot there.
I loved talking to all of them. Like I said, Rose was particularly exciting because she just, I don't know, I just loved her take on things. I loved talking to Ruby Rich, who was amazing. And she sort of surprised me with her responses. Like, for instance, when the vampire scene is really one of my favorite scenes that I put together. And I assumed when I asked her like about vampires and lesbians and film history, she would say, oh yeah, that's so terrible. But she was like, actually, this was, really exciting because we got to see, lesbians together on screen, and this was really exciting. So it was funny the way she said it and the way it came together. I thought that was one of the best moments of the film. And I love all of them. I particularly relate to Desiree's section because I think we're sort of the same age, so we have a lot of the same references. Vicky's amazing. Sue, they're all great. I can't single anyone out. Cheryl Dunye, I mean, wow.
Oh, yeah. Watermelon Woman is so good. Well, so those are some fantastic things for folks to keep an eye out for. Thanks so much for this like little brief hangout. I just wanted to have people have people get the opportunity to see the brain behind the masterpiece. So
thank you.
Thanks for hanging out for a second.
Thanks for having me. Please enjoy the film.
Yes, everybody enjoy the film. Thank you so much, everyone. And now I'm going to transition us to a wonderful pre-recorded panel that is moderated by Jenni Olsen and features several participants in the film. So this will go for an hour, and we'll close after that. I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Hi, welcome everyone. Here we are for the Dykes Camera Action panel discussion. I'm Jenni Olsen, queer film historian, and very proud to have gotten a chance to be in the film. Let's say a special thank you to the film director, Caroline Berler. Let's see, we'll get started with this unique format and see how we do. I'm just gonna describe who all we have here and then I'll let you all do a brief introduction of yourselves. First of all, of course, director Caroline Berler. You want to wave? Yep, thank you.
Hello.
I'm so pleased that we have Florrie Burke, Barbara Hammer's partner here from New York City. And looking forward to hearing from you a little bit, Florrie. Thanks for being here. Also from New York City, director Desiree Akhavan. Will you wave there? Okay. Actually, it seems like almost everyone's in New York. Everyone, yeah. Also in New York City, documentary filmmaker Vicky. You wave? Okay.
Hi.
And another New Yorker, documentary filmmaker and whatever other kinds of filmmaker, Kimberly Reed. All right. And sadly, we were supposed to have Yvonne Welbin with us, and she's not well, and we're all sending her healing energy to Chicago, and look forward to hearing how she's doing. So we're gonna talk about the film and about kind of the current state of lesbian film, the future of lesbian film. I should say, I like to qualify that and say, I mean, obviously the film's called Dykes Camera Action, but queer women in film. That's a lot in that. And then we're also going to talk about the legacy of Barbara Hammer on the anniversary of her birthday. So let's start off actually with Florrie. Would you talk to us about, well, everyone do an intro and then we'll go deeper in.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jenny. It's great to see you. And I so appreciate this tribute for Barbara. Frameline was her film home. And she was a part of the Frameline Film Festival many, many years. I'm doing my best to carry on her art legacy. We worked together on handing it over to me the last 2 years of her life. But in the last year since her death, I have certainly found out that it's much more extensive than I ever imagined. Because in addition to being such a prolific filmmaker, she also made other kinds of art. What I would just love to say is that Barbara loved film, and she loved queer filmmakers and queer film and lesbian filmmakers. And as you probably know, she was so intent on having film by lesbians carried on that she set up the Barbara Hammer Lesbian Experimental Film Grant through Queer Art. And she got a lot of pushback on the name of it. And she said, no, I'm keeping lesbian in there. And she said, that's who I am. That's how I made my initial identity as a filmmaker. So she loved young filmmakers. She would have loved this film. I don't know if she even saw her interview part in it, but thank you for making this film and for honoring Barbara.
Thanks, Florrie.
Yeah.
I believe she did see the final film. And Caroline Berler, can you talk give a little intro and talk a little about that?
Sure. First of all, thanks so much for doing this. This is really exciting during this terrible time to get to connect with all you amazing people. I'm Caroline Berler. I'm the director of Dykes Camera Action. Barbara was one of the great characters in the film, subjects of the film. And she did get to see the film at New Fest, and we got to see each other one last time, and it was really special. A little more about me. I recently finished a film called The Renegades, which was for the New York Times about being butch, and came out a few weeks ago. And
Congratulations.
Oh yeah, thank you. I don't know if you guys caught it, but it was a really fun project. And I was not in charge of the casting, Jenny, but you would have obviously been, as the proprietor of butch.org, I know that you would have been a perfect match for that film. And then Yvonne's not here, but we're actually collaborating on a film which I'm editing about a Black trans woman icon in Chicago named Mama Gloria. So we're in the middle of that edit. And so yeah, lots of great stuff going on, and just happy to be here. I can talk more about Barbara if you'd like.
Yeah, let's do the intros and then we'll
Okay.
back to Barbara. Yeah. Let's see. Desiree, can you talk a little bit about who you are and yeah.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Desiree Akhavan. I'm a writer-director. I made the films Appropriate Behavior and The Miseducation of Cameron Post, as well as the television series The Bisexual for Hulu. Anything else?
That's good. We'll do discussions in a minute. Vicky, can you do a brief intro?
Yeah, hey everyone. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here and get to hear you all talk with you all. My name is Vicky Du. I'm the director of a short documentary called Gaysians, and I'm making my first feature-length documentary right now. It's a personal film about intergenerational trauma in my family, and that's called Light of the Setting Sun. I'm in the rough cut, trying to do that from home right now. And yeah, just excited to be here.
Cool. And you were an associate producer on Free Solo?
Yeah, I was.
Oh.
Yeah, that's like I call it my documentary film school. 1 year of like intense documentary production.
I'm impressed. And Kimberly Reed.
Hey everyone. Hi, I'm Kimberly Reed, documentary filmmaker, at least sort of started out that way and have recently been branching out into more experimental filmmaking, some fiction film. And it's great it's an honor to be here on this panel, but also to just celebrate Barbara's work because I actually went to San Francisco State University where she studied and felt like I was sort of following and watching her films and studying her work, and then worked at Film Arts Foundation, which was a really important center for independent film in San Francisco that Barbara certainly had an impact on. And I've spent many times kind of branching out into more experimental work lately. Opera, film, projections for opera and stuff like that. I'm thinking a lot about Barbara, so it's going to be fun to talk about her. Happy birthday, Barbara.
Happy birthday, Barbara.
Happy birthday, Barbara. Thanks for segue there, Kimberly. And let's talk a little bit about Barbara. I mean, first of all, she was the most prolific lesbian filmmaker in history, and she made more than 80 films, which is going to be, is that the correct number, Florrie? Or is it higher? It might even be higher than that.
I think it's higher, Jenny. I actually, Mark Toscano at the Academy and I keep finding more films, so I think it's higher. She always wanted to make 100. She didn't reach that, but I think it's closer to 90 now.
Yeah, okay. Actually, since you just referenced the Academy Film Archive, I'll just say for the record, so yeah, the Academy is in the process of doing restorations on her work, and that's really exciting. So just to say, Barbara has been an inspiring figure for me for decades. I showed her work as a curator when I was back in Minneapolis, when I first came out and started programming film. And then I was at Frameline in the early 90s, and she was such a fixture at Frameline and of course on the whole festival circuit. I love one of the things that she says in the film. She says about her filmmaking, if it changed my life, it might change other people's lives. And I think, I always had this sense of her as a person. She was so generous, and you know, her work, it seems so driven by wanting to give to others and make a difference for others. And I identify with that, and in my own career as a filmmaker and a curator and a historian. And anyway, she was an amazing woman. Does anyone want to talk about their kind of either, you know, influential films that Barbara made, or ways that she impacted their work, or Caroline, I'm curious about your experience of, you know, filming and telling Barbara's story. And
Yeah, well, it was really cool because I emailed Barbara and I was like, this woman is probably not going to get back to me, definitely not today. And that would be so amazing if she would be in the film, because she's so, you know, such a huge part of the story. And she wrote back about 5 seconds later and said, sure, I'll do it. And I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. So we set up the interview and she was so giving. I actually brought some visual aids here to talk about that I dug up from when I was doing research. I found the transcript from our interview too. And first of all, I just want to recommend this book for anyone who's wanting to learn more about Barbara. She wrote it. It's really entertaining, as you would imagine, based on her filmmaking style. She's a great writer as well. And just check it out. It's a great companion as you discover the films. And also this collection called Dykes Tactics, the films of the 70s, Barbara Hammer films of the 70s. These were some of my favorites that I saw when I was, sorry, one second. Sorry, my office is right off the kitchen. A lot of traffic in that room. Anyway, Dykes Tactics, great collection. And check, but yeah, so I really love the films from the 70s. They're like time capsules. You really get a sense of the culture then. And anytime I want to learn about another time period, I always try to see the movies from that era. And you get to see the clothes and the hair and just, you know, the spirit of that time, and a lot of hair, a lot of pubic hair actually. So I loved that particular time. And one of the things she talked about in our interview was that, you know, how she really understood that we're a visual culture and we understand ourselves through watching film. And she said that, you know, if you never see a woman kissing another woman or a man kissing a man, you might not ever recognize that desire in yourself. And that was really, you know, her goal was to get these images on the screen, and she knew she was paving the way. And she seemed to have a sense of how important the work would be to future generations. What else? A big theme in her films was touch. And I feel like right now we're all craving that sense of touch right now. We're all sort of locked in our homes, and, you know, she said that she likes to, you know, make people aware of their, you know, sense of touch through her films. So that was an interesting thing. And she really was, you know, someone who wanted to help other filmmakers. I really got that sense. So I was really just glad that our paths crossed. I'm grateful for all her work.
And we're grateful for your work, and you know, it's so wonderful to see her in the film. And I got to at the festival at Frameline last year to do a tribute to Barbara, and I dug back into my memory of there's the Frameline trailer from, I don't know, about 15 years ago, had this great, it was a little animation, and it had a line from Barbara, and that I just loved. She says, "Shut up, let the artist have her opinions." And it's this great, like, she's like yelling it. And then she makes this beautiful impassioned plea. She says, "Freedom of expression for lesbian and bisexual and transgendered and gay cinema." And I love that it's, this kind of, epitaph, if you will, for her, that is what she was all about. And the other quote that I love, when I did an interview with her for The Advocate back in 2001, and she talked about her early filmmaking, her early 16mm filmmaking, which was she was always so focused on the importance of sex and sexuality, which, I just love about her work. And she said about coming out, she said, "This woman came out in my consciousness raising group, and I came out the next day." And then she said, "As soon as I heard the word lesbian, I was in bed." She was like, anyway, I miss her energy.
Yeah.
I
wanted to share one story that didn't make the film. She said that because the films were so celebratory, that they would have these dances after the screenings, and women would like take their shirts off, and there'd be like a lesbian band playing, and it just seemed like such a beautiful scene. And she said it was documented, and it's in a film she made called Sisters. Maybe Florrie could tell us about that, but that's so cool to hear. We should bring that tradition back.
I would love it if, Florrie, if you could tell us about that. And also just, I guess, kind of what has happened in this past year in terms of Barbara's work. It was so powerful that she was included in the Oscars in memoriam montage. That level of, mainstream recognition was really, really beautiful. Anyway, anything that you can say about her legacy, and also about, I think one of the things about her work is that it is not so broadly available. It's harder for people to find, and I'm curious if you can say anything about how people can see your films as well.
Sure. I don't know that I can say much about Sisters. I actually saw it for the first time, maybe in this last year. And Mark Toscano and I had lots of discussions about it, and it is fabulous. And that scene of the dancing without shirts is the most vibrant energy. It's just fabulous. Yeah, what can I say? 31 years with Barbara. It's like, it was the best time of my life. And the last year has been the hardest, of course, without her. And I'm so proud to be able to work on making sure that her legacy lives on. She was very intent on that. And Caroline, that story about answering your email is so funny, because she said to me, if you're taking over my work, you got to get better about answering emails. She said, you don't answer them right away. I said, no, I can't always. She said, it's really important to do that. So when I'm way behind, I think, the art, I call her the art saying, answer these people. So I love that you told that. As far as access to her films, Jenni, my birthday present to her this year is that her website has all been redone. And we did a soft launch in February, but then have added a ton to it. So barbarahammer.com, and it's really up to date now, and even got the announcement of Friday's event on it. And it's fabulous. So it has all the information about where her films are, how to get them, etc. You know, I'm trying to follow her wishes about how the films are distributed. And so that's what I'm doing. And I just have to say that, you know, film was really the love of her life. She told me I was right up there, but, you know, film was really the love of her life. And she just loved the process of making them and showing them. And she just delighted in the research, and I delighted in watching her process. You know, I didn't watch it all the time because I was actually very busy in a very different line of work. But one thing you mentioned, Film Arts Foundation. I went there early on in our relationship to try to get her out of the editing room for lunch or something. And I found it the sexiest experience, seeing her in the editing room with all these strips of film draped over and then cascading down into this container. And I was just like, I don't know, it's so sensual. It's one of my great memories of Barbara and her filmmaking. And she continued to make films even while she was very ill. Her last work, which she finished in 2018, Evidentiary Bodies, she never got to see it in the way that she envisioned it. And she wanted it shown as a 3-screen projection in a specially built space and entered in a special way through these hanging x-rays that were colored and then projected upon. And it was shown that way at the Wexner Center the summer after she died. But Barbara was very much involved in the creation of that. And the curator came here 3 times to talk to her about it. So I have limited the screening of that single channel because she didn't want it shown that way. And so we're looking for other people that will take it as an installation because it's beautiful. And I just can't tell you how much I admired her push to finish that. She was desperately ill, and she just said, I have to finish this. And it is remarkable and it's beautiful. And I think it really is her masterpiece. So I could talk about her forever, but there are a lot of talented people up there that I would like to hear from.
Thanks, Florrie. It's beautiful to remember Barbara, and I'm really glad that we could do this. Yes, there are many other filmmakers in the film, and we have some of them here. And it's so great, Caroline, how many great folks you have in the film. And I'm sorry that Yvonne can't be here with us. Well, I'm sorry all the other filmmakers can't be here. So let's shift gears to talk a little bit about, you know, the film came out in festivals and stuff 2 years ago.
2018.
Been traveling the world. Amazing how many festivals it's played. And it's super exciting that it's going to be getting out there even more right now. It's a complicated exhibition landscape, but exciting that people have access to it at home. But let's talk a little bit about kind of the last couple of years since the film came out and what's happened in lesbian cinema, queer women's cinema. I mean, kind of amazing. Portrait of a Lady on Fire, the new film by Alice Wu, the half of it, which is on Netflix, is like in the top 10 on Netflix for the last couple of weeks. And anyway, does anyone want to make any observations about the last couple of years of lesbian film? And I always feel like it's like we get, you know, a couple films come out at the same time and everyone's like, oh yeah, it's the new, you know, now there's going to be tons of them. Desiree, you must have had this experience with, well, at each juncture when Appropriate Behavior came out, when Miseducation came in post, like, do you have any?
I know what you mean about, I have not had that experience with my own work. I'm still so moved by what Florrie said. I'm like kind of just like soaking my tears back up right now. Like I don't want to talk about anything else. No, I just have to say I was just so moved because it is a love, it is a passion, and I can totally picture not allowing yourself to go without finishing, and to channeling all of your emotions about dying into your work, because that's what you channeled. I'm sure she channeled every emotion she had into it before that. Why wouldn't you channel this final emotion into that? It's the thing that's so incredible about being a queer filmmaker, is that you do that and you're constantly paving out new territory because it hasn't been done before. Sorry, I know that's not your question, but I'm so moved. Like I'm just so touched. I'm just impressed she got to have a partner, because none of the women I know, and myself included, have found a way to have love in our lives and this level of passion. So you must be an extraordinary woman to handle the ego of a film director, the time constraints of a film director, like, you know. Whew. Yeah. In terms of popular cinema, I do think it's a trend. It becomes a trend every few years when like one mainstream film happens. It hasn't happened with my work. I happened to make Cameron Post, which is about gay conversion therapy, at the same time that Boy Erased came out. So they both kind of like nullified each other, and neither one did good business. So it was like not a very sexy trend. But no, I haven't found that my work fell into that. Of like, ooh, the hot moment, like lesbians are everywhere.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist. I mean, but I am hopeful. Like I think every time there's mainstream queer content out there, you show to financiers, to distributors, that there's an audience out there. Before it was so much about, like, when I made my first movie, there was definitely this feeling of like, well, gay male stories can do well in the box office because gay men spend money, but lesbians don't spend money in the marketplace. But now that it's becoming the Wild West and streamers are out there and no one's going to the cinema at all, it's eyes, it's talking, it's tweets, which is a really great equalizer. And that's why I think Alice Wu's new film is one of the greatest steps we could have taken. I mean, it's amazing in 1 year to have the highest art film like Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and something so popular like a Cyrano de Bergerac adaptation for Netflix. Like both of them at once is, man, so fucking exciting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let's see. Caroline, do you have any other observations about the last couple of years of lesbian cinema?
Well, I've got to say that Portrait of a Lady on Fire was the last film I saw in theater before the quarantine started. I'm so glad we went on a Wednesday night, just randomly decided to go, because that's the kind of movie you want to see in a theater. Like, it's so, like, I'm so glad we saw it on the big screen. I'm glad there was like 8 other people in the room. So I love that collective experience of seeing a film, and I really miss it right now. I love leaving my house, going to the theater, you know, getting out of my funk, having this experience, and it's one of the hardest things I'm struggling with as we're in this quarantine. Another anecdote from that experience is that Ethan Hawke happened to be there in the audience. Like, he was in the lobby, and I was like, oh my God, that's Ethan Hawke. And I was like, for sure he's not going to see Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Ended up, he was there. So I watched the movie with Ethan Hawke. So the whole time I was like preoccupied with like, what is Ethan Hawke thinking about this right now? But it was an amazing film. It was so quiet.
He was crying at the end.
He was crying. He was wrecked by the movie. And I was like, wow. And I grew up watching Ethan Hawke, you know, in so many films. He's in my favorites, Reality Bites. And he always plays like this asshole kind of guy, but he's like clearly a very, very sensitive man. And I was just like, cool, you know. So I will always like attach that with him. But it was such a quiet film, and I feel like that's something I'm always striving for in my work, because I feel the need to like fill every little space with sound or music or dialogue, and it was such a relaxing film to watch, because it was just like it was like not quite sure what the time period was, not quite sure where we were on an island, and like very few characters. And I think I definitely saw some images in that film I'd never seen before, you know, birth scenes. I think, you know, the little baby, and I think she's having an abortion, and you see like a little baby. It's like, whoa. So that movie was amazing. Definitely one of my favorites of the year for sure.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful film.
And sorry, the Ethan Hawke thing I wanted to say, it made me think about how are we able to watch films objectively, or are we always bringing our own sort of identities to them? I was like thinking about him as like a straight guy watching the film versus me as a lesbian, and you know, and I also think about how like I'm always watching films about straight people, and like now he was like coming to my house and watching a film about like, you know, something that's sort of more normal to me in my perspective. But so it made me think about how we watch films, and if it is possible for us to have an objective, you know, experience.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And I do think it's particularly exciting that that the half of it is on Netflix right now, and that you know, that we're all stuck at home, and that so many people are getting to see it who might not otherwise have watched it. Vicky, I love in the film, the Dykes camera action, you know, you talk about how important Saving Face was to you, and have you seen the half of it?
Yeah, I organized a watch party for the day of its launch, and I watched it with some friends. And well, first, Caroline, so I just watched your film before doing this panel, and I'm like really moved by it, and like I'm very grateful to be in this space right now. I think seeing you construct how queer women's cinema has been like passed down, and then your willingness to insert me in that, which just felt so generous and so amazing, because it really did impact me personally, but to see it in like a documentary film laid out in a timeline was just really it was really moving to me. So I'm really, really grateful for your film. And yeah, sadly I just like couldn't catch the live screenings in New York City, but I'm glad I saw it today. And yeah, so I was really excited to see the half of it, and I even remember after watching it, I had a Zoom call with some friends, and they hadn't seen Saving Face or hadn't heard of it. And for me, the half of it is Alice Wu. It is Saving Face. So to me, it's a perfect film because of just like what she did for me through her first film. And I remember them saying like, oh, you know, it's kind of a, you know, it has some, I guess, improbable elements of a rom-com. They were kind of unconvinced. They were other filmmakers. And I was just like, it's perfect. You can't say anything to me that would make me feel, I guess, that Alice Wu can do any wrong. And then I was thinking more about it today after watching Caroline's film, that like, that film had, I mean, usually it takes like a psychotherapist like a year to like really access your interior. And I remember Alice Wu did that in like the first act of her film for me. And so I'm just grateful for that.
That's a beautiful observation, and really like, so the power of film, and the power of seeing ourselves on screen. There are several references in Dykes camera action. Cheryl Dunye has a great thing where she says, you need to see yourself represented, and just how crucially important that is. Kimberly, let's talk. You made such a beautiful film, Prodigal Sons, which I love all the more because it's one of those films where you think it's about something and then it's about something else. And, the kind of queer aspect of it is this like, oh, yeah, by the way, this is this, other thing, and how it just weaves it all into the fabric of life. Anyway, do you have any observations on the last couple of years of queer film?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting how it relates to what we were just talking about with Caroline's beautiful film of just representation, just how important it is to see yourself depicted on screen. For Prodigal Sons, I wasn't seeing any trans people at all on screen, certainly not in the theaters. So I just decided to do it myself. But I'm going to bring this back around to Barbara, because I think that one of the things that I really I think learned from Barbara and her approach to the world was not just that you could be the source of the material for your films, that it was not just okay to talk about autobiographical subject material, but that in many cases, like, that is the most important, that's the most intimate. And to see Barbara's work and, going to film school in San Francisco, and seeing her films and following that same pathway, it was just so valuable, not just to see yourself represented in cinema, but to also have examples of artists, of filmmakers who were working in that way. There weren't a lot. I mean, so many people just kind of were thinking about filmmaking as being one thing, which is, you go to Hollywood and you make this one kind of film, and that's what everybody is aspiring toward. But to have examples like Barbara, who were just creating films again and again and over in a bunch of different genres and very experimental, especially visually, was so refreshing to have other examples of what it means to be a filmmaker, what it means to have a lifelong strategy for creating cinema. And that is, I think especially important now when the film industry is going through massive changes, right? And we're all gonna have to reinvent cinema and probably reinvent ourselves and reinvent the way that we shoot films in these collaborative ways. So I just find it really, it was really fun just in the last few days to revisit a lot of Barbara's films and the impact that they had, because I think it's very inspiring that that experimental approach to life that goes into your films and into your life, and the two get intertwined. I find that very, very inspiring. So thank you, Barbara.
Yeah. I love there's a great thing that Sue Friedrich talks about too. I mean, it's interesting to think about all the filmmakers in the documentary that there is so much personal work, you know, like you just said, like making films of your own experience that are like really, the point is that they're about you. Cheryl Dunye's early work, what Sue Friedrich has a thing where she talks about her first film or early work, and you know, it being this very lesbian kind of story, and then this, you know, straight guy coming up to her and saying, you know, I totally identified with that. And there is this sense of how powerful it is to speak from, you know, one's own very specific experience in an authentic way, and that people identify, everyone can identify with that because it's just human, and we want to see, you know, our humanity. I have a similar experience with my work, which is very specifically like very butch and very experimental, and I have like a whole, you know, all these cis straight guys who are like, oh my God, I so identified with that. And it's a beautiful thing. I wanted to bring up, you know, on the topic of the last couple of years of queer film, one of my favorite films that came out last year is Adam by Rhys Ernst. And I love how, you know, broadly queer it is, and manages to kind of, you know, deal with all of these complicated identities and categories, and in such a ambitious way. And I'm saying this, I'm thinking like, does anyone have anything to say about it? It was a very controversial film, but and if no one does, we can move on. But anyone?
I'm gonna watch that movie ASAP, but I haven't seen it, sadly.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone should see it, in my humble opinion. There are a ton of exciting lesbian films that will be coming out. I mean, of course, it's a complicated time. There are so many films that, you know, were about to gonna be premiering at Frameline next month, that are sadly not, and hopefully finding other distribution options and or waiting until we can have film festivals again. But I'm curious to know if you guys can talk about any things that you're working on, or you know, what's next. Caroline, you so great that you did that piece for the New York Times, the Butch piece, which I loved. I was sad not to be in it, but not being in New York City, you know, clearly. Anyway, but thank you for saying.
It was a really dream project that just fell out of the sky, and it was such a fun day. And I interviewed 22 legendary butches right in a row. It was like, first up, Alison Bechdel, next Eileen Miles, like Toshi Reagan. Like, this is so surreal and amazing, and it was just so, everyone is so excited to be there, and I feel like the joy really came through in the footage. Everyone was just so happy, and I think in that short form we really touched on the history, and I think I'm so glad it got to be in such a mainstream platform, and it reached so many people. And actually, I was talking to my sister, she's like, I have like more of a language to talk to you about, you know, stuff. And so I was really proud of that film, so thank you.
It's a beautiful piece, and it is, yeah, again, an interesting thing that in this time, and I mean, I guess in any time, it would be pretty great to make a short doc for the New York Times.
Yeah, I finished the edit in quarantine, but luckily we shot it back in January, so.
Yeah, well, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, and then the other film that's coming down the pike is the Mama Gloria film, which I'm editing. And we're hoping to finish it by next year and have it, you know, play somewhere, hopefully.
Yeah. Desiree, what are you up to these days? And do you have anything coming out or stuck in post-production?
I'm not stuck. I've been writing for a while. I just finished a pass at what I thought would be my next film, which was, I'm from New Orleans, and it was a story of the Islamic Revolution through the eyes of a 19-year-old girl. It was inspired by my mother's story. And I was really excited about making it. And but you know what? I started writing something new. I started writing a rom-com, a lesbian rom-com during quarantine, because I was suddenly thinking, so before I made my first film, I made a web series. And it was very much this feeling of like, okay, what's in front of me? What are the restrictions? What do I have? What can I make? And I feel like that's something Barbara did as well that was really inspiring. But it was like work within like these are the people, these are the stories, this makes sense to me, as opposed to, like Kimberly was saying, like imitating this Hollywood thing and those aspirations. And I was like, all right, that dream I had of making my Islam, like my movie in Farsi, like, no, I'm not going to be able to like pull actors from around the world in the next 12 months to shoot in Mexico City. You know, like this isn't going to happen. But what do I have? Like, what could I do? What could I shoot on Zoom? And suddenly I was thinking a lot about Nora Ephron movies. I was thinking a lot about romance. I was thinking a lot about like feel good and like, and connections. And it suddenly made sense. I was like, oh, well, what could I write? Like, what if I made another, like if I could do anything right now, it would be to make a movie, because it would make me feel somewhat empowered in this moment where we can't do anything. And so all I was thinking about was like, how would I build my dream romantic comedy, and what would it look like to me? And it's funny because at first I really wanted to make it straight, because I was like, because then people will watch it. And I've become very obsessed lately with being seen in a mainstream way and having work that survives in the marketplace. And it was my straight business partner who was like, no, I'm not going to change the gender to make this straight. Like, look yourself in the mirror. You cannot make this straight. It is so boring. Also, she was like, I don't give a shit about the man character unless it's a butch lesbian. And just because it made the character so much more layered. Like, I was writing about somebody that I know in real life who has trouble with intimacy over the phone, who's like a real slut in person, can sleep around, but now in quarantine can't quite connect, like just because the phone is so much more intense for her. And I was like, I'm much more interested in seeing the woman who struggles with that than seeing the cis straight guy who struggles with that. Like that, the stakes went from high to low. So it's a gay film now, and it is what it is, but I'm excited. I'm really happy to be focused on making and not on what I'm sacrificing.
Yay. Well, on behalf of, the lesbian nation, thank you. And
you're welcome, Jenni, and all of the lesbians.
We can't wait. That's great to hear. And, good that you're keeping busy. Vicky, do you want to talk about what you're working on or anything you have coming up?
Yeah, I'm working on, it's funny that Kim was just talking about personal films for. So it is also a personal documentary. And it looks at how trauma, so meaning like mental illness, addiction, domestic violence, child abuse, has spread throughout my family since the Chinese Communist Revolution. So different revolution of 1949 to the present, from the East to the West. And so I interview family members across 4 generations in US, China, Taiwan, Canada. And you can basically see how it's passed down, how it's inherited, how it changes languages, all these things. And it's really, in a way, like my family's reaction to my queerness, I think kind of inspired the project. And it's just basically another way of trying to understand them. And as a result, myself. also want to say I shamefully haven't read this yet, but it was the first book I bought when I was, also coming to terms with my identity as a queer woman and a filmmaker. And I also had the same book, Caroline. And like, how did I find this? How did 19-year, like, I don't know, but I bought it.
That's so wonderful. Vicky, your project are you in post-production or is there any release plan?
Yeah, we're hopefully going to release in 2022. It's we paused production because of COVID. First it broke out in China. We were going to shoot there in March, but that wasn't possible. And now we can't shoot at all. So now we're editing the rough cut, and hopefully, 2022. It's called Light of the Setting Sun. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Kimberly, I'm curious if you can talk about what you've been working on. We've actually been working on something together that I don't know if it's okay to talk about, but all right. But I'll let you.
I think we can. My dog just joined us. That's Garbo. So we're working on, it's been great to work with Jenni, who's just like such an expert in this stuff, but there's a series that's going to come out on HBO Max. It's called Equal, and this 4-part documentary, ostensibly nonfiction series, tells queer history stories pre-Stonewall, like what happened, how do we end up at Stonewall, and there's several episodes. The one that I'm directing is about early trans pioneers. So it's great to work with Jenni, who has like we're focusing on 2 characters who I don't think people have ever heard these stories. I'm certain about Jack, this wonderful character who Jenni discovered. So we're telling the stories of these early trans pioneers who were just being themselves and getting arrested a bunch of times for it. And also telling some stories that are a little bit better known, like what happened at Compton's Compton's cafeteria. There was in 1966, 3 years before Stonewall, some protests and demonstrations and riots really that were taking place, initiated by a bunch of trans folks who were just kind of fed up with the way they were being treated. And that definitely became a precursor to Stonewall. And then also telling the story of Christine Jorgensen, which is somebody a lot of people have heard of. So yeah, it's been great, not only working with Jenni, but just a super queer crew. That's hard to say. And it's also, the showrunner is a guy named Stephen Kayak, and a lot of our conversations were just about how we were going to create a show about queer history that actually had a queer lexicon, that we weren't just kind of taking this very traditional documentary approach to telling queer history, which has been done. It's like, why do we fall into those same patterns? So it's been really great to draw on. We talked about Barbara's films, we talked about Derek Jarman, and we're doing all sorts of, I was talking about more experimental approach to work lately. We did all sorts of live projections on actors, like actually projecting on their bodies and faces, and really experimental approaches for something that's going to show up on HBO Max. So we'll see how it goes. It's coming along. We're editing in quarantine, and I think it's, we were slated for a summer release. I think that might get postponed a little bit, but stay tuned. But anyway, it's to kind of bring it back to the film and to Barbara. It was, you know what, watching the film, you kind of see this legacy handed down from generation to generation. And sometimes I think that legacy is just aesthetic. And hopefully we're following in that same line, in that same, I think, experimental approach that hopefully would have made Barbara smile a little bit.
That's so beautiful, Kimberly. I love, that's a perfect kind of note to wrap up on, and you know, that carries through. There's a line that Sarah Schulman talks about in the film about the kind of this tradition of experimental work in queer work, and how, you know, how much it makes sense that we as queers, you know, would be utilizing a, you know, innovative form, and have a sense of, I feel like I'm always like, oh, I'm so optimistic about queer film, and you know, and I guess, well, I am, because I'm excited to see all of your films, and you know, slow but steady. There's a great thing that Rose Troche says in the film where, you know, it's basically talking about how far we've come, and but she says, you know, we're not there yet. And so we're not there yet, but, you know, to be philosophical, here we are. Thank you all. Really grateful for your work.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for the beautiful stories you shared about Barbara and her influence. It just fills my heart. Thank you.
Thanks, Florrie. It's great to see you. Great to see you all.
It was really inspiring. Thank you, Florrie.
All right. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. I want to thank Frameline for providing this film for us and partnering with us for this presentation. And I hope that everyone has a really wonderful and safe weekend. And we will be posting more information about this and the video of the introduction as well as the panel later on our website. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and have a lovely evening.